Nice to meet you.
All right, so just to get started, Matt, why don't you give us a little bit about your background and how you decided to make this run at the Iowa Senate, and what experiences you bring to the table that you think might help if you were to win that role.
Absolutely. So my name's Matt Robinson. I'm running for State Senate District 33, rural Dubuque, Jones, and Jackson County. I'm born and raised. I'm a Dubuquer, and I've been in Dubuque County my entire life. Um, Grew up in a lower middle class background, working class family. We didn't have much, but we got by, and that upbringing really instilled in me the hard work ethic that I possess, and also the empathy and compassion in my life to understand that we all come from different backgrounds, different situations, and I feel like that's very important to keep in mind as we treat each other with kindness and respect. So as I said, born and raised in Dubuque, and I graduated from Hempstead High School in 2011. And after graduating high school, I immediately went into the construction trades. Secondary education did not seem like the best option at the time. So I was happy to get into the work world, and I wouldn't trade it for the world either. I enjoy my career in construction. I enjoy the work I do. I have been with Northern Winds, which is a very small subcontracting company based out of Dubuque, who does air barriers and waterproofing on commercial construction for the last 10 years. And I started as a laborer, and I've worked my way up through the ranks. And now I currently am a project manager and kind of a catch-all for the company. I bid the work, I manage the work, and quite often, just like today, I'm out on the site doing the work as well. So man of many hats. And I got into this race because I could no longer stand by and watch what's happening to our state. I believe in Iowa. I believe in the people of Iowa. I know we can do better. We are a hardworking, resilient bunch, and folks in this state deserve leaders who are ready to put in the hard work for them. I've always been very interested in politics, and the last 6 or so years has been disappointing as I value public education. I value our hardworking Iowans and the rights that they deserve. And I value our rural communities who have unfortunately been drying up and disappearing, more so as of late. So I got into this race to see if we can turn the tide and start getting back to work for the people of Iowa.
Okay, and have you had any other leadership experience or political experience that might help in this role, dealing with influencing opinion or reaching consensus, working with budgets, those kinds of things?
Right. No, I have not. But I'm not shying away from that either. This is my first run for political office, and I am green, but nonetheless, I feel like I possess the leadership capabilities to work in the Senate and work for the people of Iowa. I think I'm going to translate my skills in my trades and in my project management role in construction, understanding, looking at the bigger picture, looking at both sides of issues, understanding that there is more than one way to solve a problem, and compromising and understanding that we can come together and we can work towards a greater goal. So I think I'm going to bring those skills to the table.
When you talk about rural communities and that have been drying up or been hit hard in the last several years, are there local examples that you could point to where you see that happening?
Sure. In Dubuque County, we have luckily we've spared a bit of that. I know the Highway 20 corridor has been doing a lot of expansion. When you look at Piasta and everything they've been doing out there, growing, becoming a bit of a bedroom community, which is a good thing for that community. And as you head down Highway 20, Epworth, Farley, Dyersville, they've all been doing really great things to continue to expand and buck the trend. What I see more is when we get into Jones and Jackson counties, small communities like Wyoming and Olin and Andrew, those communities, they are still doing well. They have nice little main streets and lovely people within their communities. But the continual loss of agriculture sector jobs, the manufacturing sector becoming a little less thriving in the rural areas, and just the general availability of jobs in those areas has been causing folks in those areas to move to bigger communities and move towards more metro and urban areas. So those communities are the ones that I really want to focus on and see if we can really bring some economic development back to those communities, bring jobs back to those communities.
What do you think that the Iowa legislature could be doing or should be doing to impact the workforce challenges that the state is experiencing?
Absolutely. Well, I personally in the construction industry don't agree with the way that the current legislature has been going about working on getting folks back to work. You know, we have a very low unemployment rate in Iowa right now. We have been getting back to work post-pandemic. But what we're seeing is they're hurting the rights of workers, and they're targeting workers when it comes to things like the unemployment bill. I work construction. I have seasonal layoffs through no fault of my own, but when the weather gets cold, if the snow is flying, I have difficulty getting out and doing my work. And I know there's a lot of folks in the construction trades, whether it's concrete, roofers, excavation, they deal with the same issues. The unemployment bill hurts Iowa workers, and it hurts our ability to bring workers to Iowa. If folks are outside our state looking for employment in Iowa, that unemployment bill is not attractive to them. They are going to choose a state that offers those earned benefits, so that they know they have that insurance if their job has any layoffs or closures. But I think we really need to key in on growing our communities. I think it's, as a whole, we need to think about what we're offering people, because we do have a low unemployment rate, but we also have a lot of open jobs. And we need to look at bringing folks from outside the state into the state to work and fill those jobs. So that's where I believe that we need to fund our public education system, and we need to offer top-notch education to the folks coming to the state. And we need to offer amenities, whether it's parks and trails, whether it's a thriving business community on Main Street. Those types of things will be attractive to people coming to Iowa, while also making sure they have strong workers' rights within the state. Put all that together, I think that's a recipe to actually start working towards solving our workforce crisis.
And your area that this Senate district that you mentioned, so it's part of Jackson, part of Jones, part of Dubuque County. Is that the?
Yes. So I have it's hard to describe because you know how those districts are so chopped up. But most of rural Dubuque County, so once you get out west of the city limit, I have most of rural West Dubuque County. I don't have the Cascade area. I don't have the Holy Cross area. Jones County, I have the entire county. Anything within county line in Jones County. And Jackson County, I have most of the county except the southwest area, which is Maquoketa, Baldwin, and Monmouth. So that is kind of my district.
Do you have an idea, I'm sure you do, about the breakdown in that county? How does that run, Republican to Democrat?
Sure, yeah. In terms of, well, county by county, those numbers aren't right on the top of my head. But in terms of the entire Senate district, we are looking at about 33% of the electorate is registered Democrats. 35% is registered Republicans, with the rest being no party and independents. It's a pretty close split. I kind of look at it as a third, and a third. So that's about how it breaks down in my district.
So what do you, as you campaign, how does that kind of fit in with as you're talking with people? Obviously maybe it's kind of a middle of the road district. Are you a middle of the road guy? Are there Republican measures that you might support, or where do you kind of fall on the spectrum?
Sure. The thing is when I'm elected, I am looking to serve my constituents. I am looking to serve Senate District 33. And I am looking to listen and learn from my constituents to vote and legislate best I can to represent them. That means not always following party line. That means doing what's best for the people. While I have my ideals, while I have my background and my feelings as a Democrat, I know that that's not always going to be exactly what we need in my district. So what I'm really trying to do is talk to folks. When I'm on the doors, when I'm knocking doors, when I'm in community events and I'm talking to folks in my district, it's really about an approach that just says, hey, I'm here to help. I think that's what we need most, is to put aside the partisan divide and be willing to work across the aisle, because that's where we actually move the needle, and that's where we get progress done, and that's what's going to benefit Iowans the most.
Are there measures that the Republicans have put in place in the last several years of primarily Republican leadership that you would have supported?
Yeah, it's a little harder to find those. We try and we talk a lot on the campaign trail about the things that the Republicans have done to hurt everyday Iowans. Not to make it sound negative, because I really don't like the idea of negative campaigning. But I talk about those things because that's what's negatively impacting our lives, and I want folks to know that we can improve upon that. When it comes to collective bargaining rights with workers, they really did a number stripping rights away from teachers and public sector workers in the state of Iowa in the last 6 years. And I know I've talked personally with some public sector workers who are really disappointed and really hurt by these measures. It's affecting their employment. It's affecting the way they do their work. And you shouldn't feel that way when you go to work. Folks should have dignity and respect when they go to work. They should be able to bargain for their contracts and their, the benefits and the pay that they get at work. We also are talking a lot about how we've lacked funding to public education. I think education's a silver bullet. That is the future of Iowa. That is the foundation of our future. And we really can't afford to underfund that program. We can't underfund public education. It's not too long ago, I was in Iowa public schools, and I was lucky enough to get one of the best public educations in the nation. And I knew growing up, with that public education from the state of Iowa and a hard work ethic, I could do whatever I wanted if I put my mind to it. And I'm concerned that children now don't have the same opportunity. They are not afforded the same luxury that I had to work hard, get a good education. So we talk about the underfunding of education. We talk about not paying teachers enough. Teachers are doing so much great work in our state. And we talk about, employing Iowans and the rights of workers. So I think when we talk about all those things, we talk about what we can improve upon in the future, what we can do better.
And if you were elected and there was not a shift in leadership in the House, in the Senate, in the governor's office, how do you think you'd go about getting things done when you're in the minority?
Right, right. And we're talking about a difficult task. When you're in the minority, you have a long road ahead. What I think we need to do, I believe I said it already, so I hate to repeat myself, but work work on eliminating that partisan divide and trying to come together. And I really hope that I can bring something to Des Moines in that respect, and go down there. And if we're in the minority, that's okay. But we keep working on things that are important to us while working on compromising with our Republicans on the other side of the aisle, and ensuring that we're still getting things done for the state of Iowa rather than being stuck in stalemates, and really negating any progress for the future.
Are there specific areas where you think that there'd be open to negotiation, that we could make progress towards that less partisan divide you're speaking of?
Sure, sure. You know, one of my two big focuses are education and workers' rights. I'm not sure how receptive the Republicans are going to be to work on workers' rights with me. But I'm not going to take no for an answer. I will be persistent and be a strong advocate for our workers here in Iowa, ensuring that they have what they need, but also being able to see both sides of the issues, being very closely in a role with my company, as to the day-to-day run of a business. I understand both sides of the issues as the worker and the business owner. Trying to see if we can come to some compromises on that. But I do think what we need to work on is compromising on education. We did see that there is a bit of an opening, where the Republicans did not pass the school voucher bill this past session that the governor was looking for. And I think we need to look at that as an opening, that they are willing to talk, they are willing to negotiate, and we really need to sit down and have honest to God conversations about what's going on, and really work on compromise there.
Okay, I'll let my colleagues jump in here.
Matt, Bob, again, question for you. I guess I would say, just to expand on that, on the education side, education is very broad, all the way from K-12 to higher education and the higher education can be, 2-year, 4-year trade. Where do you have any specific areas that you'd like to see money spent, or categories of expenditures that you'd like to see increase?
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. The thing is, I think we start with where we're at right now, and we have been marginally funding our public schools. It has not been keeping up with the rate of inflation. Our K through 12 public schools have not been afforded the funding that they deserve. So I think we start there and ensure that we're funding those schools, to ensure that they have what they need. That will help with transportation costs. That will help with ensuring that our teachers can get some raises. That's a good starting point. Then we move on to actually trying to expand, and grow, and that's better funding to our public universities that we fund here in Iowa. They are in the education budget that has been kind of lacking a little bit of meat on the bones in the past couple years. So I think we ensure that our public universities are getting the funding that they need. And then we need to start looking at, how do we expand upon our education? I am a big advocate for universal pre-K. I think getting children into our school system earlier benefits us in a lot of ways. It benefits the kickstart to education for these kids, but it also benefits the fact that we have a childcare crisis in this state, especially in the rural areas. There are areas in our state that have no access to early childhood care. If we start making that a state program with universal pre-K, we're going to ease the burden on these care providers who, I talked to one, not in my district, but down in Cedar County, and she said, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the summer. I don't know if I can manage to even stay open through the summer. These folks need help. And it's not like it just goes away. If that care center closes, there are parents in that area that still need childcare. And if they can't find that childcare, then we're taking another person out of our workforce. And that's concerning as well, because we already spoke on and noted the workforce shortage that we have in the state. So I think universal pre-K, and then we move into our post-secondary education, and we start looking at whether it's 2-year schools, 4-year schools, vocational, technical, and apprenticeships. I would love to see our state making strides, making that much more accessible, much more opportunistic to our students coming out of high school, knowing that they have a place in our state. If we can show them, hey, you stay here in Iowa, you're an Iowa resident, you stay here in Iowa, whether you want to get a 4-year degree or you want to go to welding school or get an apprenticeship in the trades, we're going to help you out and get you there. And then those folks know that Iowa cares. Iowa wants them here. We want those workers. That will also help bolster our workforce here in Iowa. Funding is the big question on that one. You know, obviously we can dream up the best ideas, but if we don't have the money to pay for it, we're not getting anywhere. I'm concerned about the tax bill that was signed into law this year, the 4.5% flat tax. I think it is draining the reserves of Iowa that could be used in better ways to serve our communities. I think if we continued ensuring that wealthier Iowans and corporations were paying what we would consider their fair share, that money could be used to fund programs that would especially help in my district, especially the rural areas where we lack access to early childcare. We lack access to rural health care, and we lack access around the state, not even just in rural areas, to mental health and brain health services. So that right there, I believe is a big thing.
I'm not sure I understand how would a universal preschool program differ from what we currently have in Iowa? Isn't it free preschool for 4-year-olds? Is universal more expansive or?
Right. It could be more expansive, bringing the age down to 3. So we're actually bringing the age down, and not just doing a preschool program, but actually somewhat of a childcare. And we could maybe even talk about going lower, being childcare, kind of a daycare, more in a layman's terms, that is programmed through an education system. So we're learning, and we're also covering our childcare needs.
All right, I'll jump in here. So just one follow up, and I think you kind of hit on this as you were talking about education. You know, the funding piece is the big thing. So absent, you know, kind of Democrats, you know, getting a majority and then somehow rolling back that flat tax that's put into place. Are there any other options to pay for? I mean, how do you allocate more money to education? Where does the money come from?
Right. It's going to be difficult if Democrats are in the minority. For me in particular, and the Democrats as a whole, just considering that we are pretty tightly budgeted in the state already. There are a lot of areas that we have been underfunding for quite some time, whether it be conservation and natural resources, the education system. I mean, I can go on and on. I will say it will be difficult to find those funds without getting a Democratic majority. But that is also part of my mission in running, is to turn some of our rural areas Democratic and show Iowans what Democrats are ready to work for them, and help them understand that we're here to create programs that benefit the whole, that benefit our communities, and hopefully we can regain a majority and start looking at how we're taxing Iowans. I don't want to see taxes being raised, especially on the middle class, lower class folks a lot like me, you know, making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. I did the math. I don't get much of a gain from our flat tax. I was already being taxed right around that rate. I think I get a grand total of about $3 back a year. So that's nice. But I'm definitely not seeing the benefit of, say, someone making $400,000, $500,000 a year, where they will be seeing thousands of dollars coming back into their pockets with this flat tax. So I say we continue our work and our mission as Democrats to regain the majority so that we can turn around this flat tax and start benefiting Iowa.
All right, changing gears here a little bit, especially in the wake of the Roe v. Wade decision. A lot of focus is now back on state legislatures and what they kind of are going to do state by state with abortion rights. What are your thoughts on what the state of Iowa should do, or what the legislature should, what the standing kind of should be there?
Right. I think I can put it very simply. As a legislator, it is not my position to step in between a woman and her doctor when it comes to her healthcare needs and her rights when it comes to receiving what is healthcare. It is a fundamental right to receive the proper care, and it's not my position as a legislator to write a law to determine how that works.
As you're out and about talking with constituents or knocking doors, what are you hearing from folks on that issue? Do you think that is typical of the voters in your district?
I have had good responses along that line. What I actually get more often is folks that are unsure of how this actually affects them. They hear everything that may be coming across on the news and maybe through national media, but they don't quite understand how it directly impacts Iowa or how it's going to really turn out. Who is making these decisions? So what I just like to take the moment to talk to folks and say, what they have done is put it back on the states, put it back on your state legislators, which would be the position I would be in if elected. And I tell them that, you know, that the idea is that it's in our hands now, and we need to vote for people who have the same ideals. And then we talk about where we stand on things. You know, it's the beauty of talking to a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. We don't always agree. And there are folks that do not agree with my position as a pro-choice candidate. I believe it's a woman's choice, and I don't believe it's my job to get in between that. It's a woman and a doctor, and it's a healthcare decision. And some folks don't agree with that. But I respect everyone's opinion. We don't have the same opinions, but it doesn't mean that anyone deserves any less respect for what they have as an opinion. And we talk about maybe where we can find some common ground, because some folks don't realize that we currently have a 20-week abortion ban in the state of Iowa, and most folks, even when they are not necessarily pro-choice, do have the feeling that there should be some access to abortion. There should be, you know, medically necessary when it comes to the life of a mother, that should be available. And, you know, we really get into the nitty gritty sometimes. And then we talk about what the governor has proposed, a 6-week abortion ban, one of the most stringent in the nations and and folks would like a more moderate approach when it comes to it. Is the consensus that I'm getting.
So Matt, shifting gears here a little bit. I think when we first talked to you, when we first kind of officially filed to run, one of the things you talked about was appealing to younger voters. Particularly, I think if you go to Des Moines, you'll be one of the younger lawmakers down there. How do you appeal to those younger folks, and what does that perspective? How is that advantageous as a legislative candidate?
Right. Well, that's like you said, I will be one of the younger legislators. And what I like to purvey or put across to folks is that we need to take care of our Iowans here and now. We have to address the issues that are facing Iowa right now, real time. But we can't become short-sighted, and we have to look at what is ahead of us, what is our future, um, what is our legacy in Iowa, and we need legislators that are ready to think about that and have that vision of the long-term goals of the state. Um, that's ensuring that we have a great public education system for the folks in our future. That's ensuring that we're taking care of our lands with soil and water conservation and sustainable agricultural practices. That's ensuring that we're building an Iowa to last, not just taking care of what's here and now. We have to do both at the same time. And I think folks appreciate that because they do. We have a lot of things to work on right now, but they are worried about where we are going. We are worried about the future, the next 10, 20, and beyond years. So that's what I'm bringing to the table because God willing, I have a long time left here in Iowa. I got quite a few years ahead of me, and I want folks to know that I'm looking at the long term and looking at what we are going to be looking at in Iowa a long ways down the road.
You mentioned the soil and water quality issues, conservation issues. Are there specific measures in that realm, things that you would advocate for?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is that Iowa has turned into kind of a duopoly of corn and beans. And what I would really appreciate is a way for all of us to work together to look at more sustainable solutions in agriculture. We're talking about regenerative and restorative agriculture. That's ensuring that we're using the best practices that we have available, and they are ever evolving. Like any industry, we continually learn about what works best. The use of cover crops, and I will say I have to give Dubuque County credit. Dubuque County watershed programs and the folks in agriculture in Dubuque have done a really good job at taking the initiative and understanding that they are stewards of the land and they are responsible for this land for the future. Over in this area of Iowa, we have a lot of family farms still. But we do notice out in Western Iowa how a lot of the family farms are being bought up by corporations, and it's Monsanto and it's the seed companies that are owning the fields. I want to ensure that the family farms here in this district are staying in the families that they're owned. And we're also opening new doors when it comes to agriculture. That's working on establishing new markets to grow our own food here in Iowa. We have some of the best agricultural land. I think we need to be looking at ways to grow that food here in Iowa that will not only increase the opportunity for profits and gains for our farmers, but also increase opportunity for folks to buy cheaper produce that's grown here locally. But cover crops, that really works big on the soil and water conservation because it reduces our runoff. It reduces needs to use pesticides and chemicals, and that reduces what's going into our rivers and streams. We see all summer long how many beaches in the state of Iowa have been closed because of potentially dangerous situations, and really we have to look at the root of that problem, which is the runoff coming off of our farm fields, going into our streams, going into our waterways, and polluting them. And I think what we can really do, agriculture is driven by yields. It's how much can you produce, and that's where you're going to make your profit. And as a legislator, I would like to look into ensuring that we can quantify, giving farmers and agricultural professionals the tools to quantify how they are reducing water runoff, how they are improving soil quality, how their cover crops are actually capturing the carbon out of the air and bringing it down into the ground naturally. If we can quantify that and then give farmers give them a payoff for what they're doing, that creates a program that will last into the future because they get to see the benefit of what they're doing. They get to see their yields of sustainable farming, and they get to see the profit of it.
Matt, you've talked a little bit about, some of the things you've been hearing on a lot of these different topics. Maybe talk a little bit about, how have you been campaigning? What does that look like? What have you been doing to get your story out, but also to hear others?
Absolutely. I have been running nonstop all summer. My goal is to be everywhere and anywhere, meeting folks where they're at, whether that's at community events, it's in parades, it's in the small town festivals and community days that they do, county fairs, and sometimes it's just walking down Main Street and walking by someone and saying, hey, you're a resident here, and talk to folks about what's going on. And sometimes it's not talking politics either. Sometimes it's just talking about how things are going. What do you do for work? Do you have kids in school? What are some of your hobbies? What do you like to do? Where do you live? Where do you come from? Did you grow up here? And it gets us into really meaningful conversations because we find those opportunities to talk politics without talking politics. And I think that's been a really effective tool within the campaign, is to make the connection with folks and just show them that they have an opportunity to elect someone who is their friend, their neighbor, their fellow Iowan, who really does care about what's going on in their lives. And that's what I really want to put across the most when I'm having these interactions with potential constituents.
And as people say, well, okay, so we've had we've known your opponent and worked with her for 4 years. How would you differentiate yourself to a voter who says, well, I'm not sure if I want to make a change here? What do you put out there to a voter to make your case?
Right. I think when we're talking about that, when we're talking about my opponent, it comes down to her record in voting in Des Moines and how she's voted and how it's impacted the state and our district. And then we can talk about particular issues, whether it's the fact that she voted for the school vouchers bill. And maybe we're talking in a small town community that has a high school or a middle school still. And that's one of the main contributors to their economy because that's where the jobs are at. And talking to them about how that school vouchers bill is very detrimental to rural school districts. But that's the main thing is we talk about her voting record. We talk about what she has done. And we talk about my vision for the future, how I differentiate from my opponent, and how I view those particular issues and ways that we could do better.
And you indicated that were you elected, you would really seek to represent the district and the feelings of the constituency. How do you think you would go about getting that information? How would you can't knock 5,000 doors every time you place a vote. So how
Right.
do you think you would get that feedback from voters once you were in office?
Right. Very, very good question. I think our best route is we talk to as many people as we can now. As we're campaigning, we get the feel of what our district's like. We get the feel from these constituents as to what their important things are. I will say on my doors, number one issue in this district is education. Everyone wants to talk about education, and they are very concerned about the future of it. That is something I will carry to Des Moines with me. But it's also, just listening to your constituents. They will reach out while we're in session. It'll be emails, it'll be phone calls, and ensuring that we're taking those calls, ensuring that we're taking those emails and listening to what everyone has to say. And we're coming back on the weekends and we're having forums and we're answering for what we're doing in Des Moines. I went to a Cracker Barrel this winter and it was 3 Democratic legislators and no Republicans. And that's disappointing as a constituent of the area, that my representative is not coming back to the district to listen to concerns, to talk about what they're doing in Des Moines. I think it's very important. You have to be responsible for what you're doing. And when you do that, you will learn. You're going to listen to your constituents. You're going to learn about what's going on, and take those and carry that voice down to Des Moines.
As we wrap up here, any issues, any other things that anybody wants to bring up? Or Matt, are there topics that you would like to hit on that you think we should know about you?
You know, I think we've really covered the big stuff. I think what we've talked about gives you a pretty good idea of who I am and what I'm going to stand for. I think I'll just kind of conclude by saying I am an everyday Iowan. I am a blue collar construction worker who has been trying his best ever since day one to ensure that we have a better Iowa ahead of us. And I want folks in my district to know that. I want them to know that they have an ally and that they have someone that they can rely on in me. Because that's who we are in Iowa. We rely on our friends and neighbors. If I need help building a pole barn, or I need help getting hay out of the field, or what have you, we know we call on our neighbors. And I want the voters in Senate District 33 to know that I am their friend, I am their neighbor, and they can always come to me with their concerns, and they can ensure that they can be sure that their voice is going to be heard in Des Moines if they elect me to the state Senate.
Okay, great. Well, we really appreciate you meeting with us today, Matt, and thanks for your time. Good luck the rest of the campaign.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time and the interview. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Take care.